What was your favorite or your least favorite or the weirdest program you remember fondly when you were growing up?
Like weirdest?
Yeah, like a strange program. Like why how'd that stay on the air? Who approved that? You know.
I think growing up in the Detroit area, you had to be a fan of the Ghoul.
Now it's time for a Dave Ivy Ghoul cartoon! Yep, there! All right, group, if you are ready, we got this week's band!
Big B and the actual proof.
The Ghoul?
The Ghoul. The Ghoul was pretty unique to the Midwest. I think Ohio and Indiana and Michigan, maybe more than that. I think the Ghoul was from Ohio originally.
Let's look up the definition of ghoul. Let's see. Oh, a stupid jerk, usually from the state of Ohio.
Maybe Cleveland. But he was this...
Yeah. Who was he?
He was this late night, like really late night horror movie host, and he would do all these skits and gags between films. And he wouldn't show the best stuff, but he would show funny stuff. And then he would like put his own audio.
Test. Back on.
Hi, this is Tom Ryan on Oldies 104.3 WOMC.
Into the stuff, you know, like he would put samples like from the song Wipeout.
Yeah.
He would stick that somewhere in a movie where you would hear Wipeout.
Yeah.
It looks like about 8 or 10 out there now.
Ha! I've seen scarier zombies in Royal Oak.
Welcome to the UPN 50 hotline. Don't miss UPN 50's fantastic lineup of movies for November, including Navy SEALs, The Crow, Crocodile Dundee, Witness, RoboCop, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Beverly Hills...
But he was a riot. It was just funny and odd, and he had a big following. I mean, like they had a tribute to him at the Redford Theater after.
He's local to Michigan.
Well, he was kind of the Midwest.
Everybody has a vacuum cleaner, unless of course you live in Hamtramck and they're still using a broom, but what the heck.
He aired on Detroit television, real late at night. But I think he was also I think he's originally from Ohio. But
and
anyway,
when he died, they say you said
well,
he
used to intermittently come and host like a movie night at the Redford, and then he would show horror movies and kind of do some of his shtick from his heyday.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a trip. If you look up and see what the Ghoul looked like
Svengali or something like that. Is that the word?
He had this kind of fake goatee.
You know what? This has been pretty ratty. It doesn't look bad, does it?
And then he had these glasses on where one of them, the sunglass, I think was in. The other one was out.
Huh.
And he had this kind of crazy looking, I don't know if it was a wig or like a furry hat that he would wear. It wasn't a fez. And and then he would have these recurring characters of like this little puppet named Froggy.
Oh, my little Froggy!
And he would torture Froggy.
Yeah.
He would flush him down the toilet.
What?
He would exactly. He would take a can of spray Cheese Whiz.
We got some of this Cheese Whiz. It's not only microwavable, it's aerosol.
And kind of jam it into him and fill him full of cheese.
It's like the original Elf on a Shelf, like abusing a toy.
Kind of, but I just remember that was. I mean, that's about as weird as it got as a kid.
Stop everything. We'll let the ghouls simmer for just a few minutes while we check in with
Brian Burleson.
I've asked this. This is like a stock beginning question of a number of people. This is the first time I've never even remotely heard of the show. I mean, the Ghoul.
Okay, well, yeah,
Wow.
I think you'll find people who are around my age and older.
On YouTube?
You can find plenty.
Okay.
You can find plenty of the Ghoul on YouTube.
Well, we may have already shown him, but here he is on screen if you haven't seen him yet. Well, viewers note, the Ghoul will not be presented tonight so that we may bring you the following special program. I had to. All right. Okay. Brian Burleson, As I Live and Breathe.
It me.
It you. the mellowing, bellowing blues apologist himself. This man was born to face the Klieg lights of the concert stage. Would you consider yourself a highly trained, sensitive musician?
I definitely wouldn't consider myself highly trained, but I think the older I get, I'd probably consider myself more sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah, you're certainly a decent human being either way.
Thank you.
So I give
thank
you.
I've had to work on that, but thank you.
The work has shown and paid off beautifully.
Thank you.
So just as my intro today, I thank the good Lord for America's First Amendment protection of free speech, because it allows even the most outlandish ideas, some might call conspiracy theories, to stand the test of public scrutiny. For instance, some people say that the Middle Ages never happened. Unthinkable, right? Well, today I am joined by a man who claims a much more recent phantom time phenomenon in music did occur. To have the gall to back up this fanciful invention of an entire genre of music takes more than just talk or flimsy evidence. This guy actually believes that jazz and swing bands with more than a dozen players existed. That would mean that there actually was a dance called the jitterbug, okay, and that music composers used to have royal titles such as Count Basie or Duke Ellington or the King of Swing, Benny Goodman. I mean, come on. I've never heard such Tommy rap before. What would it take for me to believe in the existence of big band? The actual proof. And today, Mr. Brian Burleson has the actual proof of big band existing to show us in the form of blurry photos he claims are of big bands from yesteryear. Clearly, though, these images are nothing more than the creation of AI. Just look at the wonky hand. I got some of them right here. Just these hands are not even real, man. Like, look at that. You claim that's real? I mean, that's like 6 fingers. That's like the Princess Bride, like the Inigo Montoya is going to find him and kill him for killing his father, But I mean, just on down the line, I mean, just ridiculous. You claim that this proves that there is such a thing as big band. I mean, hogwash.
These look AI generated.
They are actually.
Yeah.
There are actually a couple of reels just to throw off the scent of the trail. But you can have that's my gift to you. But that's my Shaggy Dog intro to Big B and the actual proof. Mr. Brian Burleson. My name's Ryan Ellis, as you well know. But people may not. This is Brian Burleson, one of the greatest blues guitarists in all of Michigan. And I'm pleased and honored to be joined here by him today. And now for the real intro.
Thanks for having me, dude. This is great.
Well, thanks for having me. We're in your museum-like Metro Detroit, or I suppose a greater Metro Detroit home.
Yeah, northern suburb.
Right.
Yeah.
And in conclusion, I am joined by this jive hepcat, Frank McLeod. I mean Brian Burleson, an unlikely man with an unlikely name, who, like Robert Mitchum, is a man out of the past. This anachronistic man who should have lived in the days when it counted to be a man, loves film noir so much he had a Chiaroscuro pet as a child until it was eaten by a Maltese falcon. All right, and I got another one. I just can't help myself. Striking an officer, resisting arrest and murder, all on Christmas Eve. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Let's wrap you up real pretty, shall we, and take you right down to headquarters. Give me your hand. How you doing?
Good, right.
All right. Let's go into the real interview here.
Yeah, man.
All right. Just well, speaking of controversy, what do they call them? Conspiracy theories. You don't catch flack unless you're over the target. What's your most controversial or outlandish opinion? What's something you believe to be true even though you can't prove it? Something you have faith in, perhaps?
all human beings have potential. All human beings have potential, even some of the worst ones.
Wow. So no one's incorrigible. No one's uncorrectable. Everyone can be reached.
People can be incorrigible, and there is the possibility they may not be able to be reached. But, I hold out hope that, that potential exists with everybody. I know that there are things that can, prevent it. There are mental health challenges, things like that. But, and when we've talked about it some too, that there are people who have changed their lives and changed their character in really miraculous ways. And part of that process was someone believing in them, and certainly them coming to an understanding about themselves that they could do it too. That there was a better version of them that they could put the work in and become. That's a big thing. I know it comes up in conversations about the death penalty.
Yes.
I recognize that there are people who have done the absolute worst things, and they ought to be incarcerated.
Right.
But I know that there is some value in talking with them and studying them, and often when you talk to people like that, you find out that they have been through horrific, traumatic, abusive things in their early lives that resulted in who they became later on. And in some of that, it's a discussion about having compassion for people. So that's probably a controversial thing. I know that there are some people who think that you put them in a chair and flick the switch or shoot them full of something, but I want to see people have value, even when they've demonstrated that they may not have it, but they still have it. So
that's what? Screw my opener. That's the best one you could possibly have. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
I can't add anything. I can just say amen to that. What is the getting from the divine to the more terrestrial, from the ethereal to the terrestrial? Because what a high topic to start on. Give it to me straight, Doctor. What's the greatest movie of all time?
Oh, wow.
Or up there if you can't decide.
The popular opinion on that is Citizen Kane, and for what it did for film, and as far as techniques and the script and the performances, I agree with that. I think Citizen Kane is brilliant.
I'm right there with you.
It's brilliant. And I mean, like, I've been to San Simeon,
Xanadu.
Yeah.
Wait. Is that the Hearst Estate?
Yeah.
I went there last summer.
Oh, that's awesome.
I took the tour. Yeah.
It's so cool, but it's so much cooler because of how much I like Citizen Kane.
Did you take the tour?
Yeah. Well, you can't.
Okay,
you can't.
You have to. Yeah.
Well, it's not only that, you can't tour the whole place in one day.
Yeah.
They offer like 8 or 10 different tours.
And did you notice hardly a word? It's like what's the guy in Harry Potter? Like, he who shall not be named. That was Orson. Like, they name dropped him and I had to bring him up before they name dropped him.
Well, I think that depends on the tour guide that you get, because I've actually toured San Simeon
a couple times.
4 times.
4 times.
4 times. And because I wanted to take different tours. It was like, all right, I've seen that. I want to see this. And I went at different times of the year. Like, if you go around Christmas, they have the place decorated like it would have been, for Hearst during that era. It's really such a great thing.
Oh, yeah.
But the last time I went there was a guy who was, was not afraid to bring that up.
Yeah.
And recognize that for some people like myself, it's kind of the allure of that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Hearst, I think, maybe has okay, it was a Valentine, like everything was like, he was an amazing man. He was they're not going to say a bad word about him. How could they?
Right.
Tonight on the 10 o'clock news, on Halloween, all spirits good and evil are said to travel wherever they please. UPN 50's Joel Lukashevitz takes you live inside a house that many believe is actually haunted.
About 3 weeks after we moved in, we heard tapping.
Decide for yourself. Are these paranormal phenomena real? Are they on the move in your neighborhood? Don't miss Do You Believe? Tonight on the 10 o'clock news.
You won't get away with it, Cody. You've got a good memory for names. Too good. Shoots the man. No. Name the greatest band of all time, and who is the greatest guitarist of all time?
Oh, wow. Wow. Man, that's tough. Because I know the Beatles should probably be named as the greatest band of all time, especially because they would be listed as a primary influence on the band that I enjoy the most of all time. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan.
I'm going to do a party trick. I can't do it, Adrian.
No, just one then. Just one. A normal one.
You've had several of those already.
No, he hasn't got them.
Of course he got them. He got them earlier.
Don't argue, Roger. Just do it.
My favorite band of all time is Pink Floyd. The greatest band of all time is got to be considered the Beatles.
And okay, so if anyone attends your shows, in addition to a concert, they get a bit of a history, a culture lesson on several bands, several artists. You don't just take influence from them. You name drop them and try to get other people to.
Yeah, there are some key groups that we play some of their stuff or we're influenced by, those kind of things that I will always bring up. One of them being the Paladins.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now please welcome the Paladins.
Well, you be the wheel and I'll be the spokes, baby. Come on, baby, let's rock. Come on, baby, let's rock it down the railroad track.
Yeah,
I was gonna say you got
the Paladins poster there on the wall, signed by Thomas Yearsley and Dave Gonzalez of the Paladins. But yeah.
But to that point, how hard it must be to select a greatest guitarist because so many to choose from. SRV,
greatest guitarist, and it's timely to say this because he just passed away recently.
Really?
Is Jeff Beck.
Everybody says, who's the best guitar player? This is what cinched it for me. Jeff Beck, they're playing the song. He holds his guitar like this and it's feeding back. And he's talking to somebody. He's like 19 years old. And while he's talking, he's dropping the guitar and doing triplets.
Oh my goodness.
Perfect triplets, and catches it right on the last note where it's feeding back. And we went, what? That's impossible. That was 1966. So how good is Jeff Beck now? When you start thinking about if he was that good then and he only got better, that's why when people say who's the best guitar player, I go Jeff Beck. He is probably technically the best player. Eric Clapton's a great blues player. Jimmy Page is a great rock player. Jeff Beck is a great guitar player.
Jeff, and I was not a Jeff Beck fan for the majority of my life, but then he won me over, and it's not like I necessarily try to emulate his playing in any way, but what I have seen of Jeff Beck, and especially he's the only guy that I have seen live, and it's the same thing on video. I can see what his hands are doing, but I still don't know how he's doing it.
Well, that's me when I watch you. me when I'm in person, 5 feet filming you, and you do. I'm like, what? What's going on here? Some voodoo?
Thanks. But that was Jeff Beck was just effortlessly amazing at what he did, and I was really sad to see him pass. You know, I had the honor to see Les Paul when he was in his 80s at Iridium Jazz Club in Times Square, and I remember being pretty blown away by the fact that in his 80s he was still playing pretty well and certainly could command a crowd, and he was very funny, and you know, it was a great experience. And I kept thinking, you know, when Jeff Beck passed, he didn't show any signs of slowing down. I mean, he still played phenomenally. And when people talk about his contemporaries, like, I'm still a Jimmy Page fan.
Yeah.
Not that much of a Clapton fan, but I respect what he's done.
You and Cobain both. Cobain in his journals infamously called two entries right next to each other. He said, Clapton is a second-rate blues guitarist, and then he followed up by saying Weird Al Yankovic is the future of music. So you and Cobain have something in common there. Yeah.
Well, I think some people, and of course rightfully so in my opinion, I didn't see where Clapton had progressed beyond a certain talent level.
Interesting.
Whereas I think Jimmy Page was the best and most versatile of those three as far as being a player, but Page was kind of sloppy, easily the best songwriter out of them. But overall, as a player, absolutely Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck is incredible. And then just when you think that you've seen everything, he gets out a slide, and then you're like, I can't do that either. So there was, you know, probably first 40 years of my life, I would probably said Stevie Ray because I'm such a Stevie Ray fan. But really, you know, when I came to an understanding of, you know, through my own playing and also, you know, kind of studying some of what Jeff Beck did, it was just like, that is a level of skill that is pretty incredible.
So certainly look up the Paladins, certainly look up Jeff Beck, because if someone this good is telling you, you best listen. Enough said.
Thanks.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
Did you discover approbative music and film on your own, or did you grow up around good music and good movies? Approbative meaning favorable. Like did your family and friends expose you to the good stuff, or did you find that on your own, or a little mix of the two?
Definitely on both, but more so in the film environment. That would have been my dad's influence. My dad, I owe him you know, so much for showing me so many good movies.
Flashdance, Police Academy 2, The Untouchables, Romancing the Stone, The Golden Child, Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, Ghostbusters, The Karate Kid, The Burbs.
At an age where, you know, a lot of parents might not have done that. You know, I saw Apocalypse Now in the theater before I was 10. I think.
Whoa!
Yeah. And now here's the thing: I didn't understand all of it. I saw The Shining in the theater.
Whoa!
And it didn't like mess me up, but it also made me. I mean, like, the music in The Shining is incredible. The music in Apocalypse Now is incredible. But yeah, like all the great spaghetti westerns I had probably seen before I was 10. Like, if you go upstairs in my house right now, there's a film poster of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Sergio Leone.
Exactly.
Quentin Tarantino, I just found this out, in addition to being an insanely brilliant guy, his parents or his family, whoever he raised him, his mom and dad were very good about bringing him into a theater all the time.
Mm-hmm.
While I really enjoyed MASH, part of the delight I had watching it was sitting in a cinema full of adults laughing hysterically, all getting off on their own naughtiness. Not to mention the fun I had going back to school and describing those scenes to the other kids in my class, who could never have dreamed of seeing a movie like MASH, or The French Connection, or The Godfather, or The Wild Bunch, or Deliverance. there was usually one other kid allowed to see some of the wild shit I saw. Because I was allowed to see things the other kids weren't, I appeared sophisticated to my classmates. And because I was watching the most challenging movies of the greatest movie-making era in the history of Hollywood, they were right. I was. I asked my mom about it. She said, Quentin, I worry more about you watching the news. A movie's not going to hurt you.
He talked about how that made him more sophisticated, more cultured, in his opinion, even looking back, not bragging about it, than his classmates. Do you think that kind of cultured you from a young age? Getting that high art, digesting it?
I do. My parents, both college graduates and, had an awareness of that and enjoyed film and television. So, yeah, I mean, without sounding arrogant, I certainly felt kind of blessed and fortunate growing up to have done that. I wanted to circle back. I said that my dad was a primary influence as far as film goes. My brother, I have one sibling, my brother Kevin, who I owe that same kind of deep gratitude to for having turned me on to the music that still informs who I am as a musician right now. I can tell you that my first two concerts were, number one was Roger Waters from Pink Floyd. So I got to basically see a Pink Floyd show as my first concert.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which was incredible and still informs the kind of show that I would like to be able to put on someday if I had the budget.
Laser fireworks.
And secondly, the second concert I ever saw was Stevie Ray Vaughan. So those are my first two shows. And I can tell you that, like, even as we sit here in my basement, on the wall behind my mixing board are all Roger Waters posters, and then, like Pink Floyd posters. And then on the far one, there's Stevie Ray. There's a Stevie Ray one right here. I mean, that's who I am at this age.
Yeah.
When before I could drive, I was seeing those guys.
It reminds me of that Super Bowl commercial a few years ago that Pepsi put on, talking about the origin of Jimi Hendrix, and he walks by, there's a music store, and there's a guitar in the window, and you hear like the thing, like one of his songs playing, and then it's like alternate reality, and he walks by as an accordion in the window, same melody, just on an accordion, and it's like, what could have been,
Right.
But what could have been with you, but glad, they took you to the best from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. Very fortunate.
Old habits are like a Christmas film. They die hard. Was being a musician put upon you by your parents or friends or school, or was becoming a musician entirely your own idea?
Entirely my own idea.
Wow.
Entirely.
Blame yourself. No.
I mean, but at the same time, I want to give credit to my brother in that regard.
Wow.
My brother got a guitar before I did. And, I played his guitars some.
Yeah.
And, then when I got my own, I messed around with it. I really was not any good at guitar.
Wow. That's
through the end of high school.
Wow. You.
Well,
you. Sorry. But looking at you now.
I mean, I don't know what your experience was, but
yes,
when I got out of high school, at that point, you don't have to live off the same kind of schedule that you did, when you're going through high school, going through school up until you graduate. So now I have time. I had to take a year off before I could go to college. So I had that, they call it a gap year, I think.
Yeah.
Off. So I ended up playing a lot of guitar during that year, and that's when I started to get halfway good.
Man.
Yeah.
The rest is history. Good one at that. Good sounding. If you started a neo-Mennonite community that stopped time at a certain era and you lived within those parameters, what era of time would you choose? I would assume the early to mid 20th century, film noir era.
Yeah. Man, it's tough to say because I would be informed about what is great about that era, so I would need to know that if I chose it, but at the same time, in being in that, I would enter into it not knowing what was cool about that era, I might miss it. So,
wow.
I think the 50s would be a great time.
Well, to that point, now that you bring up that perspective of the question, I wonder then what is so enviable about the present that people in the future are perhaps, as they're watching this in the future, looking back on saying, man, I wish I was in 2024 Anno Domini and back when it was...
I'll say this about the present. And
yes.
again, this is kind of informed by my Buddhist practice, I think, is that the present moment is very important.
Okay.
In any time.
Okay.
But I really feel empowered creatively in a way that I could not have even 30 years ago. And we talked about that video that I made for Red Carpet.
Right,
okay?
right.
I'll tell you that when I was just out of college and stuff, the education that I got at CMU at that time was outdated and pretty useless. Like things that I learned how to do represent an education that was probably state of the art 10 years prior to that. Like I learned how to edit audio using a splicing block and a razor blade and tape, whereas, people who had the money to attend better schools were doing it with mouse clicks, It was that kind of thing. So I learned the principles of it. I learned how to mix audio on, a mixing board and how to use a 8-track analog multi-track recorder. I learned some cool things there, but it wasn't state of the art. CMU's film program that I actually went there because that's what I wanted to do didn't really exist. They just had kind of outdated video equipment, so I ended up trying to shoot movies with kind of bad video and edit with video editing decks, and it was just very less than. It was the kind of thing where, you want this and you really only have the tools to make this. So now, in this era, we shot Red Carpet on 3 iPhones. I edited
really?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't tell. Wow.
And I edited it on a 2009 Mac Pro that had Final Cut Pro 10 already on it that I bought off eBay for like $350. And it looks, in my opinion, it looks great. And the stuff I learned how to make it really look like old-time black and white was off a YouTube video, And this is an era where if you want to get information and you're kind of diligent and wise about seeking out, you can learn so many incredible things.
Right.
And you can do so much stuff. Like I have a studio in my basement where if I can think of it, if I can dream of it, no matter what it is at this point. I mean, if it's a 109-piece orchestra, I can do it down here.
Think you'll be alive this weekend?
I can do it. I have a sampling library of a 109-piece orchestra.
Wow.
That is incredible, and it's all over the Noir record.
At the beginning, like the theme,
there's stuff in there. Yeah. So that's the thing I say about now is that there really is this really is a time where, and I know a lot of youth may not feel this way, is you can really do some incredible things and realize your potential and do things that are vital and enjoyable and brighten or enrich the lives of others, things that are really uniquely fulfilling for yourself in a way that was not available to me, in decades past.
Right.
So that's something I recognize that technology, in its effort to make our lives easier, also kind of leaves people jaded in a way,
Yeah.
And they kind of overlook certain things. But again, for people who are wise enough to be able to think outside the box, and recognize the potential that is present in this very moment.
Wow.
And within themselves, you can do some pretty awesome things.
Don't hold yourself back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whenever I hear people talking about, I could never do that. I mean, like, I'll run into people who are my age who will be like, man, I always wanted to play guitar. And it's like, then play.
Right.
Dude, play. I said you're gonna have an arc there that may be difficult at the beginning, but there's things that I can tell you in the course of this conversation that's going to make it easier for you. Number one, if you get a guitar, get an electric instead of an acoustic, because acoustic has thicker gauge strings on it. The action is usually higher. It's harder on your fingers. So if you start with an electric guitar, lighter gauge strings, make sure that it is set up by a professional luthier.
Okay.
And most places, some will just everything they sell is set up.
Oh.
But get it, just make sure that it is set up, because that means that it's going to have proper intonation, and the action, of the strings off the fretboard is not going to be super high. That's the problem that a lot of people in my generation got, is they would get an acoustic guitar where the guitar strings are, half an inch off the guitar, and trying to play heavy gauge strings that are half an inch off the guitar is like trying to hang off, somebody's roof by your fingers. It's horrible. So that's a big thing. And the other thing is that there are so many instructional videos that are available for free on YouTube,
right.
That kind of thing. I had to sit around and watch other people play, or buy books. There were certainly books, not to dismiss them by any means. There are great books that you can read that will get you started on guitar. There was one called Blues Guitar Inside and Out by a guy named Richard Daniels. I think I'm getting that name right. That was pivotal in the beginning of my playing.
Wow.
In whatever it is in life, if you're talking yourself out of something because, you don't think that you have the potential or the ability to do it, you really have to consider whether or not you are succumbing to, and this is a big Buddhist thing,
yes,
a delusion about your potential, because Buddhism is about enlightenment versus delusion, or wisdom versus delusion, And if you're having a delusion about what you're capable of, that's preventing you from fulfilling yourself, fulfilling your mission, feeling your happiness. If, the other thing that I say to people who want to start guitar later in life or whatever is, listen, do not be concerned with what other people think about your playing.
Interesting.
The biggest, that's right.
That's crazy.
The biggest corner that you'll probably turn is when you start to like what you're playing.
Interesting.
It's huge, and it's not that it's arrogance, but it's like a real pure kind of fulfillment where you're like, I don't care what anybody thinks, I can switch between these three chords, and it sounds so cool. I could do this all day.
Yeah.
And when you start to do that, or if you start to learn a song that you've always loved and you're able to play part of it, then you're on the downhill at that point. You've kind of crested, and now you're going to start picking up some momentum. And there's an enjoyment to playing an instrument that goes beyond just playing the instrument.
Right.
I mean, at this point in my life, I own a bunch of guitars, I own a bunch of gear, but they all have, cool aspects about them. That Marshall JCM 900, when it's cranked up, sounds so awesome. Whereas like the clean channel on this amp or this Fender Twin, I would play something different, and they'll just sound beautiful through that. So
horses for courses.
Yeah. Yep.
This is a UPN 50 news update with Amir Makeup Center.
Good evening, everyone. Get ready for a real-life horror on the 10 o'clock news. We're talking a real haunted house haunted by a Metro Detroit man. Tonight, you'll find out why. Do you believe? It's a story you don't want to miss.
I was reading in the paper, or at least a friend of mine read it to me, that you met Stevie Ray Vaughan. Was that the only celebrity you met in all your travels? And is Stevie Ray Vaughan the guitar to you, or do you draw from several guitarists?
I did meet Stevie Ray, and I can tell that story if you like. I'm always glad to share it. There are some other key guitar players. When I said the first two concerts that I saw were Roger Waters of Pink Floyd and Stevie Ray Vaughan, when you talk about Pink Floyd, you're talking about David Gilmour. And David Gilmour is a big influence on my playing. It's funny. We played a place live back at the beginning of April, a very cool show at this place called Blue Stage in Napoleon, Michigan.
Wow.
Shout out to Blue Stage and TC at Blue Stage. But one of the earliest songs we played was Wooden Kimono off
Yes.
the Noir record. Well, a lot of the guitar on Wooden Kimono is very Gilmore, you know, and it was funny. After the set, this guy came up to me and he said, dude, you got a lot of David Gilmour in your playing. I'm like, thank you. It's there on purpose. It's there on purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
But meeting Stevie Ray, I was blessed when I had just turned 16. And again, we're talking about my brother's influence here. Kevin, my brother, was going to U of M at the time, and Stevie Ray came to Hill Auditorium in Ann Arbor. So I've probably been 16 for just a few days, and I'm about to drive out to Ann Arbor. I've got 2 of my 15-year-old friends with me, and I went out there, saw Stevie Ray. It was incredible. Hung out with my brother at his dorm afterwards for a little bit. So it's getting kind of late. So to date myself, obviously, there's no cell phones at this time. So
yeah.
we figure that we're running late and we ought to call our parents. So, and this, I always say this is important because we stopped at a gas station by the highway to use a payphone, and the payphone was not working. The payphone was out of order. Which was huge. If that payphone works, you'll find out I don't meet Stevie Ray Vaughan. So the payphone was out of commission. And what was behind kind of this gas station was what was at the time the Ann Arbor Marriott. And we drove back there and get in the parking lot, and sure enough, we see this big tour bus with this like airbrush guitar flying across America on the side. And we're like, oh, man, is it? So we went inside. We're going to still use the payphones. And we saw Reese Winans, his keyboard player, and Chris Layton, his drummer, walking into the lounge in there. So now we're eyeballing them. And then we came over to kind of look at them. And they saw us, and they came over and said, you guys are probably at the show tonight, right? We're like, yeah, absolutely. It was so awesome. And they said, well, we can give you a tip. We're probably pulling out of here in about a half hour. And the tour bus is going to pull up to, that sidewalk on that side of the building. And he said, if you guys come out there, you can probably get Stevie Ray's autograph. So at this point, we have to call our parents and say, we're not going to be home yet. And we were already calling because we were running late. Well, I called my folks, and they were not happy with the idea that I was going to stick around. But both my parents are teachers and very responsible.
Yeah.
So, and they made the right case for it as far as, hey, you not only do you need to do the right thing for yourself, you've got your 2 15-year-old friends, their parents are counting on you. And I'm like, well, we're going to call them too. We're all going to make phone calls, and we're going to be a little bit late, but we've got an opportunity here where we might meet Stevie Ray. And, the idea was that you're going to get grounded. And I'm like, well, if I get grounded, it's going to be with Stevie Ray Vaughan's autograph, hopefully. So anyway.
Oh, man.
So we went out, and sure enough, Stevie Ray comes out, big feather coming out of his hat and everything.
That's great.
The tour bus driver's like, let him get on the bus, and then he'll come back here to the stoop and sign autographs. And sure enough, he did. So he came back, and, at that time, Stevie Ray had, within that year, I think, had to enter rehab, for alcohol and drug addiction.
Wow.
And it made him such a better man, a better player for the rest of his life up until he was gone,
Beautiful.
But at that point, me being just turned 16, certainly being around a lot of kids who were trying that kind of stuff and everything.
The chemicals are just starting to take effect, and here I am. I got over there.
Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
He was a hero to me. And the fact that he had very publicly, acknowledged that he was giving up drinking and drugs meant a lot to me. And I wanted to tell him, as one of his younger fans, hey, I know what you've done, and I just want to say that you're my hero, and I want to thank you for being brave enough to do that. So I told him that, and he shook my hand and earnestly thanked me for that. and he signed, the only thing that I really had on me was a dollar bill. So
Man.
he signed a dollar bill for me, and just, it was pretty incredible. But the thing that comes out of that was, you know, at 16, I'm a pretty big kid. You know, I was probably 6'2" then.
Wow.
Almost, you know.
Same height as George Washington.
So I shook hands with him, and I noticed that his hands were bigger than mine.
Man.
And Stevie Ray was not a big dude. I mean, he was like, I don't know, 5'6", 5'7", maybe. And he had huge hands. And I thought, you know, at that time, I think we had read One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest for one of my classes. And there's a bit where R.P. McMurphy's character meets Chief Bromden, the big 7-foot Indian, and Chief Bromden thinks that R.P. McMurphy's hand is bigger than his. And I was like, I wonder if that's what it was. That I experienced this thing where it was like, his stature to me registers somehow mentally as larger physically, you know. But then after that, I would look at pictures. Like, I got pictures of Stevie Ray on the wall here. Stevie Ray had huge mitts, and they talked about it in interviews, and it was an aspect of his playing that he would do these really deep, strong bends with the thickest gauge strings that you can pretty much play a guitar with.
Yeah.
So it made sense that he would have these huge meat hooks to be able to get the tone and, you know, play the way that he did.
Cause and effect. Does playing like that swell up your hands, or that he was born with those hands?
He was born with those hands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't think it was that. He did kind of suffer a toll that has been talked about in interviews and books. Is he would, you know, work the calluses off the tips of his fingers, and then he would have to super glue them back on.
Oh my word! No, because they say piano, like sometimes piano players, if they so long are in practice of stretching their hands, they can't quite, their fingers have bigger gaps forever because of that. I wonder if...
I believe that.
Yeah.
There may have been an aspect of that to his hands. I know he certainly had to have developed a kind of strength to his hands that, you know, even if they were big, that someone else might not have had if they weren't doing what he was doing regularly with his hands. You know?
And Paul McCartney's father had arthritis, scared Paul McCartney, so he swears by he does like hand stretches.
Oh wow!
That's what he says keeps him to this day being able to play. I've been to Max Dugan's a bunch of times, and oh my word, there are so many stories. I wish it wasn't so common. Of like either someone has a horrific accident, their hand gets messed up, and then they have to basically learn how to play on a dead hand, or they get bad arthritis or whatever, and they just can't play anymore. Like that is like, you know, almost like in cardistry, like card magicians. Like there's like a time limit. You can only do it for so many years until like anybody. Doesn't matter if you're the greatest in the world. You don't quite have the dexterity. You know, I have a culinary degree, and all my professors said, watch your shoes, watch your feet, your knees, and your back. Those are the things that will go out on you. How is it just your hands, and how do you have anything special for your hands to take care of them, or, you know, so good so far, nothing needed?
So far, there's not really anything that I've done. I mean, I do think playing regularly helps. So that's a thing. But yeah, so far I haven't encountered anything like arthritis.
Praise God.
Yeah. I'm just I'll be 55 in December.
Yeah.
And no, I'm thankful that I don't have any problems right now.
That's beautiful. That's a blessing.
Yes, thank you.
Barring any accidents outside of your control, did you ever write anything good? I mean, did you ever accidentally write something brilliant? Leonardo da Vinci's last words were, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have." What standards of artistic excellence have you set for yourself, and how are you faring in attempting to attain to your own creative standards?
That's a good question. I think with the Noir album, I really hit the mark that I wanted to hit for myself.
Beautiful.
And that was aided in part, I think, certainly by the pandemic coming, enabled me to have some time at home to be very meticulous about making the record. And, obviously I owe something to the musicians that worked on it. Mitch and Aaron on bass and drums, but also Joshua James from Theater Bazaar Orchestra, Zen Zadrovic on piano, some other guys that are great, but especially the producer Peter J. Peter J.
Wow.
The Noir record wouldn't be a quarter as good as it is.
Wow.
Without Peter J.
Who is this guy?
Peter J. is a producer that lives in the Detroit area. He's the sound guy at the Roxy in Rochester, which is celebrating, I think, 1 year right about now of concerts. But before that, he was the sound guy at Callahan's in Auburn Hills, and Callahan's was kind of the blues venue in the Detroit area for a while, where there's sort of a mid to upper level blues acts would come and play, and during his run there, we played in some blues competitions where he would run sound for us. I opened for my buddy Pete and the Twistin' Tarantulas. That was how I met Pistol Pete. Was at Callahan's opening for them. But that's how I met Peter J. and got at least aware of his abilities. But I didn't know how good he was until we started working on the Noir record.
Wow.
And what a value he is. That record to me sounds like we spent $50,000 on
Wow.
it. And
it sounds big. It definitely sounds big.
Yeah. And I can tell you that it was not $50,000 that we spent on that. But yeah, I owe him a lot for that. But to kind of answer your question about creativity, and even was it Van Gogh that you quoted there?
It's crazy. Da Vinci.
The
final thing he says, I didn't live up to my standards. Really? You, Da Vinci? I know 37 paintings in his lifetime, but Mona Lisa and so forth. I mean, come on, man.
I think what it is that creative people, sometimes to a fault, have a certain desire or expectation that they want to meet. And there's different ways that you can handle that,
Yeah.
You can feel bad about it and feel like, man, I'm not approaching it, or and I think this is the way to go, is to feel like I'm getting better, I'm on the right track, I'm on the right path.
Well, you mentioned that before, when you first start to go downhill on the guitar track, you got those three, you can switch between chords. Like once you feel that you're good enough to your standards, and then also I don't have the quote here. I wish I had it. But what he had an IQ of 200 plus. Isaac Newton, apple dropping his head. Mm-hmm. His final words, I forget exactly. Maybe I'll put them right here. But similar thing of like, he's like, I didn't even scratch the surface of what I could have done with my, like. It's so crazy. These people, you'd think that the greatest would recognize that they're the greatest, but sometimes they're just so humble.
Well, it's one of those things where perhaps the contributing factor to their greatness was their relentless effort to try and reach something that they felt like they never reached. But nonetheless, the rest of us recognize that, wow, even though he aspired to this and did this, everybody else has been doing this and continues to.
Are your goals reachable within Buddhism?
Yes.
Like on Earth in your lifetime, you know what I'm saying? Like you like.
Well, yeah. It's interesting you should ask that, because my goals change, and that's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
Like I am so blessed. I became a father to a wonderful little boy.
That's amazing.
My wife and I had our baby Benjamin a little over 2.5 years ago, and that's just been a very transformative thing. And certainly, I think about when I wrote the Noir record and worked on all that kind of stuff. Film noir is kind of dark and pessimistic and has kind of a violent and
interesting,
it's a view of the world, It all comes out of hard-boiled fiction, and I can talk about that, but anyway, becoming a father and really having an ambition that I just want my kid to learn how to be happy for an entire lifetime. You know?
That's
and
beautiful.
that's
beautiful.
But that's a thing in Buddhism, you know? And I've got to say, I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. That's a key thing about my life right now. So, as far as what I'm going to do creatively,
yes, sir.
It's going to have to support that happiness. You know what I'm saying? It's going to have to be a present moment thing that occurs every day from here on out. I have been exposed to, at least in the last 2 years, an artist that has kind of recalibrated my idea of songwriting.
Now I'm curious. Who is this?
Well, he's and it's funny because he exists to a certain extent in a genre that I often dismiss.
Okay. Wow.
He's considered kind of an Americana artist, but also a country artist, and a lot of like modern country, contemporary country, I consider formulaic and not very good music. You know?
Yeah.
But this guy is an incredible songwriter. His name is Jason Isbell.
Okay, look him up.
And yeah, like he won a Grammy this year for his for like best Americana record, I think, for his record Weather Vanes. But he is considered a great, like all-time great songwriter.
And he's young. Is he on the start?
He's in his mid-40s now. He's in his mid-40s. But my friend Dan Agnetti turned me on to Jason Isbell. And like I just saw him in concert last weekend in Kalamazoo. He's a phenomenal guitar player. I mean, like really, really good.
He's not faking it like Elvis up there.
No, he's phenomenal guitar player.
Man.
Great singer. But his song, I encourage you to check him out. He's a great songwriter. But, you know, before the Noir record, I was listening to a lot of Tom Waits. And Tom Waits kind of influenced the Noir record. Like Red Carpet was the first song that was written for the Noir album.
Yeah, I can kind of see him singing over that. Yeah.
Yeah, so...
I'm not sure if you ever played in... there's a venue back... It's probably still around called the Modern Exchange. It's in kind of downriver. It's like it's weird. It's a thrift store in the front and a venue in the back.
Huh.
But they also sell records, like a record shop slash thrift shop. And I used to play shows there when I used to play in bands as a kid. And when you walk from the thrift shop part to like the concert venue part, the door, there was a Tom Waits album above when you walk through. And I was a kid. I never heard of Tom Waits. So I thought it was like, that was the name of the, like maybe he's waiting or that's the name of the, I know reference.
It was a verb.
Yeah, him and Captain something.
Captain Beefheart.
Yeah, there's just nobody like them.
Yeah.
So yes, sir.
I wanted to finish up there and say that, so Tom Waits was kind of an influence on the start of the Noir record.
Right.
And at least where I'm at right now, and I don't know if this is going to be the case or not, but it seems like Jason Isbell is informing some of my choices here. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a different standard. Not that he's better than Tom Waits, but I think his stuff is kind of, you know, and I've watched a lot of interviews with him recently where it kind of finds, his songs kind of find their origin within his life in some emotional way.
Yeah.
And then he may adapt them to be in a song about a character or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know what route I'm going to take, but when I listen to the variety of his stuff and things like that, it makes me wonder whether or not I want to step outside just film noir stuff and, you know, take on some other things as well.
Just when other performers would have dropped it, put it aside and said, well, that's all I can milk that bit. Not me. Okay, watch this.
But yeah, that's kind of in my thoughts right now. It'll be interesting to to revisit this interview.
I was going to say
in a few years
exactly.
and go, oh, that's the seed.
Exactly.
Don't miss what promises to be one of the greatest opening night extravaganzas this town has ever seen. Laser, fireworks, new uniforms, new court, new logo, and a tougher Pistons team will launch the 96-97 model year.
Yeah.
I love, you're a teacher. Well, your parents were teachers, and so it's in the blood. You teach in your shows, and I used to teach at a local school.
Mm-hmm.
I taught non-reading, writing, arithmetic subjects, but in spite of that, I always gave my kids vocabulary words. I love language.
Yeah, absolutely.
A linguophile. How aleatoric is your live show? How much do you leave to chance when you're up there on stage performing? Aleatoricism or aleatorism is a noun associated with the term aleatoric. It's popularized by the music composer Pierre Boulez. It's a French word. Look it up. So an aleatoric composition is a composition resulting from actions made by chance, almost like throwing dice, like at random. Like how much is planned of your live show? It's like the same every time, and how much do you just kind of like make up on the spot?
Our live show presently is pretty well planned. As far as the improvisation that takes place during solos, it depends on the song, but every time any of us solos, there's something within the moment there. There's some things that I'll play note for note off the Noir record that are usually like shorter phrases, like the first solo in Red Carpet I could probably play in my sleep. But I like it. I like those notes. I like how it comes together. It's interesting that you bring that up because like even at our last show, there was a point, we do a cover of When the Levee Breaks.
Yes.
And there's
when the levee breaks.
Yeah. So there's a point in When the Levee Breaks where Cam, our keyboard player, Cam Dixon, is encouraged to play. And before the gig, he was messing around with some guitar pedals that he runs his rig through, and he was just making these cool noises and stuff.
Yeah.
And I walked over to him, I'm like, use those pedals, man, do something fun. And after the show, people who have seen us several times remarked on, oh, that was really cool what you guys did there. And I'm open to that. There are music projects that I have been in that I've recorded in this very basement, and we're far more that kind of thing. I do enjoy improvisation and experimental kind of stuff. I enjoy it a lot. It's not something that we do so much in Big B and the Actual Proof,
right?
But there may be a spot for it, especially since we added Joshua James on saxophone and Cam Dixon on keys. Those are guys that I feel like you can pass them the ball, and they're not going to do anything bad.
In baseball, I'm not up on sports. Would you consider them a 5-tool player? They can do it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, the last concert I saw you guys. I need to go soon. Now they got a fancy camera again. Afterwards, I was talking to a bunch of friends and family of Cam attended the concert. I think maybe his uncle or someone was there, and he was telling me no one ever taught him piano. He just picked it up one day, and it just made sense to him.
Yeah,
that kid is preternaturally gifted. I mean,
he is. He plays like somebody who's twice his age.
Where is he gonna be? Hopefully, still with you. Still with you.
Let's. You know what? This brings up a Buddhist thing.
Okay.
This brings up a Buddhist thing is, to have a fixed idea about Cam having to stay with us. I would never put that on him.
You live with an open hand, not a closed fist.
Well,
things come and go from the hand.
He's 24 years old,
man,
and really coming into his own as a player.
Yeah.
I'm almost 55. I got a 2.5-year-old, You know, we're at different spots in our lives. If he were to have an opportunity to join a touring band or somebody else, whether it's in Michigan or anywhere else in the world, and was like, hey, I'm sorry, I got to leave, I would be like, I'm going to shake your hand. I will come and see you. I wish you the best. You do your thing. You know, because that's what you got to do. If I am of the idea that, no, you have to stick around and play Max Dugans with us once a month, I'm holding him back. And you know what? If he goes and has some kind of success, I fully expect him to be an apostle for us and say, you know, there's this guy back in Detroit that I played with before this. You should check him out, you know?
I mean, you give him kudos every night from...
Cam Dixon on the keys. Charlie Musselwhite for you. Once again, we're so lucky to have Cam Dixon on the keys.
From the and then some. It reminds me of Jimi Hendrix. Originally played with the Isley Brothers and then moved on.
Yep.
There's that famous, you can look up on YouTube of him. He looks like the most like. Contained person ever. Like you could tell he's just sitting there. He has to sit in like in where they have that little he's so underutilized. Oh my word.
Actually,
let me get this. The last three things I will have we'll see if we can make it three. It's the last one I've sort of just started adding in. Wisdom, plugs, and this is, I don't know. Do Buddhists pray?
Yes.
Wisdom, plugs, and prayer. So I'll ask you a piece of wisdom for the folks at home. Any plugs both for you and for maybe people like, you know, speaking of preaching the gospel, you already have the Paladins, other people, but anyone else you want to plug? And then finally close with, you know, end on a high note. Can't get any higher than the heavens. Close us in the word of prayer. So first, wisdom for the folks at home. Would you please leave the... You've already... That's a funny thing. You're a wise man. You've done it 50 times, but another, if you would, another piece of wisdom for the folks at home.
Some things that I kind of brought up before, but I really want to encourage people is to understand how much potential every person has. And look at your life and consider how you cultivate wisdom. How do you cultivate wisdom? You know, some people can do it from reading or watching videos, things like that. But at the same time, what are you deluded about?
Wisdom versus delusion.
Exactly.
Circling back.
A big thing that I want people to think about in their lives are, what do you have fixed ideas about? Okay?
Interesting.
And, you know, it might be the idea that I've done the same thing for a job for the last 5 years. I'll never be able to do anything else. This is what I'm going to have to do the rest of my life. That is a fixed idea.
Yeah.
And it's also a delusion. You know?
Right.
I get that someone might be able to kind of make their case for, well, this is all I've ever done. But the fact is that's a delusion, you know?
Right.
So when people have fixed ideas, it's the kind of thing that holds them back. I'll give you an example. You know, when I met my current wife, I was 48, and you know, I could have told myself at that point that I'm too old to have a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and people around you might be saying, "Yeah, you don't want to do that because then you're going to be kind of grandpa age."
You're
again,
pretty proud of me.
That's a fixed idea. I'll tell you what, becoming a dad has been just the best thing, and I'm so thankful for it. And I'll tell you what, being older and wiser, because who I was in my 30s, who I was in my 40s, would not make for a good dad, I don't think, you know.
Wow.
Compared to where I'm at now, you know. So that's a big thing, is really try to have an awareness of that. Now, for me, you know, my Buddhist practice involves doing something called chanting, but chanting is basically prayer. It's basically meditation. And in Buddhism, a prayer is not a wish or asking for something that's outside of yourself from a higher power. In Buddhism, a prayer is making a determination. It's absolutely a determination about, I am going to do this. I am going to do this. I am going to transform this situation. I'm going to transform my life. And, you know, you have goals about things. It's one of the things that really drove the success of Big B and the Actual Proof. So you asked me about the name before. Actual Proof is what you show from your Buddhist practice. That's what that stands for. When you talk about actual proof in Nichiren Buddhism is your life. It's the results that you get from your practice. And it's how you can encourage other people to say, hey, this is what Nichiren Buddhism has done for me. I'm not trying to sell you on something.
Right.
I'm just telling you that either as a faith or simply as a philosophy, it has enabled me to cultivate the wisdom to make these choices and to take these actions that have improved my life to the point that I'm the happiest I have ever been. You know, fixed ideas are things like the best time of your life is in your 20s. No, the best time of my life has been pretty much in my 40s and on.
That's beautiful.
And I mean, I want people to really understand how empowered they are and the agency that they have. That's a key term that, you know, when I speak with my Lutheran pastor wife, that's where she resonates with Buddhism. And she says that Christians need to understand that they have agency within their own lives. You know, that it's not something that you're just wishing for. It's also an understanding that you are capable of that. And that's where she and I connected. You know, is this idea that, yes, we are empowered through our faiths to do great things, you know.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Plugs both for yourself and for perhaps, if you're feeling so generous, people you know and love, and then finally we'll end in prayer. Or how can people find you? How can people your music online and elsewhere?
Well, our website is Big B and, as in AND, the Actual Proof, which looks like Big Band.
Rumor has it.
Looks like Big Band, the Actual Proof.
.com.
Yeah.
Not net
yeah,
org.
But you can go there, and that'll show a calendar when our shows are and how to get our music and kind of explain the band and our personnel. Pictures, a link to the red carpet video and some of our live stuff. So you can find us that way.
And finally, would you close us with a word of prayer, Mr. B?
Well,
May you.
in Buddhism, you know, in Nichiren Buddhism,
yes, sir.
There's a phrase that we recite. It's Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, you know, and
I know. No, I don't. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. So I'm just going to recite that phrase. It's you know, it's about the mystic law, and your belief in it. You know, when I talked about belief in the potential of all living things, you know, that kind of thing. So when I recite Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, that is how I, you know, kind of invoke power in my practice.
Wow.
This is where I chant, you know, right here. But what we'll do is I'm going to ring this bell, and we're going to say Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. There you go.
Thank you very much, Mr. B.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure and an honor.
Thank you.
Addendum. In my early 20s, I memorized Exodus chapter 20, and at church services, whenever the sermon started to trail off into drivel, I would recite it to myself in hopes that repeating it would establish undercurrents of its precepts within my heart. Many years later, I am time and again still capable of competing with Moses' ability to break the two tables of the law. And I notice that the first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me," is at odds with saying a prayer of a different religion to a different God. And afterwards, after I prayed the Buddhist prayer, I felt guilty that I had broken the prime directive of Scripture. I considered it a beautiful prayer. I would love to pray it again if I can do so scripturally, and I would love to open up a dialogue talking about prayer and the Buddhist faith and the Christian faith. I am trying to learn more about the gospel, both to understand it for myself and to be better at sharing the gospel with others. And Jesus, in his most famous and the model prayer, has us begin it by directing our prayers specifically to the God of the Bible, and then underlines that fact by immediately following it up with having us acknowledge the holiness of the God of the Bible's name, and everything that follows from there is specific to the God of the Bible. I want to keep my prayers within the bounds of Scripture, and so I want to tread carefully next time, and I think it would be a very fertile and fruitful conversation to start up for next time. Well, I want to end on a brighter note, and so penultimately, to close, I will commend the audience watching at home to turn to the gospel, to turn to Christ. Look up the Romans Road and the gospel. In fact, I have many gospel presentations on my various video channels. You can look up and find the gospel for yourself. And so finally, I must needs end on the highest note of all and close by turning to the roof-raising, skyscraping, bone-shaking, heart-quaking blues man of the hour himself. Yes, that's right, Mr. Brian Burleson and his band, Big B and the Actual Proof. I'm going to play the first cut off the latest video I shot of them over at Max Dugan's just a few months ago, and it is the first cut off their most recent album, the Noir album. The song is Wooden Kimono, the one that Brian described as being emblematic of his influence from David Gilmour of Pink Floyd in his guitar playing. So without any further ado, and as I make my own adieu, enjoy. Oh, and speaking of prayer, please pray for me. I'll pray for you. This has been Ryan Ellis. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Au revoir.
Big B and the Actual Proof. Your entertainment for this evening, this is one of our own from our debut album, the Noir album. Film noir meets blues guitar. This is a song about revenge. And it gets its title from a quaint little euphemism from the Chicago underworld for a coffin, a wooden kimono. Six in my revolver, 3 stuck in my side. The radio says I'm wanted, I'm more dead than alive. We'll tell St. Peter, hold on. First I got a thing to do. Before I'm through, I'll put you in a wooden kimono.
Chicago lightning. And then I heard your name. You should have seen a stranger, not somebody that I knew. So many clues put you in a wooden kimono. When I cough, I'm a neighbor driving to the wrist cut mall. Can't see straight, but I still trust my aim. No need to worry when that was rains. Side of town, she's counting up that money like I'm not around. Won't let her count the holes where the daylight shining through. You laid out on view in a brand new wooden kimono. Are you laid out on view in a brand new wooden kimono? Are you laid out on view in a brand new wooden kimono? Thank you so much.